Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Am I being debated? Am I being debated? Oh my God. Oh my God. Everyone has written an obituary. Like, there are so many people that have most likely, like, look how fast they fucking dropped this on the Washington Post. This has been a moment that everyone was waiting, so many people were waiting for. Kind of a tasteless reaction towards a man who did so much stuff in his time. Bro, this is like, you know how America celebrated when Osama bin Laden was fucking murked? Like, this dude is Osama bin Laden to the third world times 1 million. You know what I mean? Like, there's no comparison. I mean, this is the true villain. Like, if there's a singular force of evil that you can point to, feels too soon, you know, maybe let's wait a bit. No fucking shot, dude. Fuck that guy. Wow. I'm in a little bit of shock. Did Kissinger die? Yes. We broke it before they did, dude. We outflanked them. Oh my God. I'm not. I don't know what to say. What a glorious, joyous moment. What a joy of, I mean, what a joyous moment, but also at the same time, it's like, you know, he got to fucking live to 100. Let's take a look at what Henry Kissinger was doing right before he died, guys. Okay? Let's take a look. Let's take a look at what he was doing right before he died. Oh, Henry Kissinger on Hamas attacks fallout. Germany let in too many foreigners. As a minority in Berlin cheers Hamas attacks on Israel. Former top U.S. Wow. 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 What can you say? The only thing that makes me sad is that Anthony Bourdain died before he could see this old man pass, you know? Yeah. These are moments where I assume, where I hope that, you know, hell is real, right? So that he fucking goes. Here's Anthony Bourdain's opinion on Henry Kissinger. Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. Dude, he doesn't, like, people like this, evil never dies, okay? People like this, unfortunately, they just get away with it. They stay alive for 100 years. Shout out to you when you went to his 100th birthday. Hasan Piker in Austin show attends war criminal Henry Kissinger's 100th birthday party. Rap TV. Kissinger died to a self-sucking incident. That's what I've heard, too. Here, let's watch the Mehdi Hasan video on, like, literally. Let me tell you something. This is going to be the lightest version of his most grave crimes against humanity.
Kissinger's 100th birthday. Yes, the man who served.
Oh my God! I made this. I made this prediction, right? I said that was one of my predictions. Henry Kissinger will die November 7th, 2023. Shit. Close, but no cigar.
Served as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State to 2 Republican presidents, Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, the author of more than a dozen best-selling books on foreign policy and grand strategy, and a man who's been described as arguably the most famous and controversial diplomat of the 20th century, turns a century old on Saturday, May the 27th. In fact, this past Monday, Kissinger blew out the candles on his 100th birthday cake on the Economic Club of New York stage in front of an adoring audience. And remember, it's not just conservatives who worship at the altar of the Henry Kissinger. Establishment liberals, top Democrats even, have fallen over one another to associate themselves with the great Kissinger, to heap praise upon his ginormous intellect and historic achievements. Barack Obama's administration honored Kissinger with a special award. Hillary Clinton called him her friend and said she relied on his counsel. Samantha Power, the self-styled champion of humanitarian interventions, went to a baseball game with Kissinger. And Joe Biden, when he was a senator, toasted Kissinger, although, to be fair, he hasn't yet invited him to the White House like all of his predecessors have done. But look, here's what I want to do to mark Kissinger's 100th birthday. I want to talk about some of the many, many people around the world who didn't get to live till 100 or even 60, 70 or 80 because of Henry Kissinger, because of his support for brutal dictators, brutal regimes, brutal wars and war crimes. Let's start where else? In Southeast Asia, the war in Vietnam, which Kissinger may have ridiculously won a Nobel Peace Prize for ending, but which he prolonged and escalated in the first place, including a secret and illegal expansion of that bloody war to Laos and Cambodia. It was him. Thanks to a report released by the Department of Defense in 1973, we know that the National Security Council, headed by Henry A. Kissinger, approved each of the 3,875 Cambodia bombing raids in 1969 and 1970, as well as the methods for keeping them out of the newspapers. To quote Kissinger himself while instructing an all-out air assault on Cambodia, anything that flies on anything that moves. As Human Rights Watch noted in 2001, United States and South Vietnamese aerial bombings on Kissinger's watch left approximately 350,000 Laotian civilians and 600,000 Cambodian civilians dead. And just this past week, The Intercept reported, on the basis of US military documents and eyewitness accounts from Cambodian survivors, that Kissinger is responsible for more civilian deaths in Cambodia than was previously known. And yet, Kissinger has never apologized for what he did to Laos or Cambodia, instead defending those bombing campaigns as legitimate attacks on North Vietnam.
I failed to see the moral issue.
Vietnamese forces, and saying he failed to see any moral issue with them. Still, as the late, great Anthony Bourdain once wrote, witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic. Then there's Argentina. In 1976, a coup d'etat overthrew the elected president and replaced Eva Perón with a military junta. That junta then launched what's been called the Dirty War, the hunting down of political dissidents, of socialists, trade unionists, students. And they launched it with the approval, encouragement even, of Henry Kissinger. We know this thanks to declassified documents, which the New Yorker reported on.
Oh, God, I'm going to do such a fat America bad propaganda power hour tomorrow. It's not even funny. Like, so many motherfuckers that always say, Hasan, all you say is America bad, are finally going to come to terms with why America bad. Incredible stuff. You know? There are oftentimes, there are very few singular individuals that you can point at when describing American foreign policy being just insurmountable evil, right? Because it's oftentimes simply a collection of individuals acting out on their capital self-interest. No, tomorrow's not the IRL stream. It's next week. I was wrong. Luckily. I was wrong, and Kismet dictates that. I think my mom just...
Writing, 2 days after the coup, Kissinger was briefed by his Assistant Secretary of State, who warned him, I think also we've got to expect a fair amount of repression, probably a good deal of blood in Argentina before too long. Kissinger replied, whatever chance they have, they will need a little encouragement, because I do want to encourage them. In a meeting with the Argentine foreign minister 2 months later, Kissinger advised him, in the words of the New Yorker, winkingly, quote, we are aware you are in a difficult period. We understand you must establish authority. If there are things that have to be done, you should do them quickly. Somewhere between 20 and 30,000 people are believed to have been arrested, tortured, and killed in Argentina's dirty war. As The Guardian notes, many bodies have never been found. No birthday parties for them. Then there is East Timor, which was invaded by Indonesia in December 1975, an invasion that led to the death of at least 100,000 people over the next 2 decades plus of Indonesian occupation, according to a UN-backed Truth Commission. On the eve of that invasion, literally the day before, Kissinger, alongside President
there's so much more. Like, this is just not even a highlight. Like, this doesn't even scratch the motherfucking surface, dude. I can't even begin to explain this to you, okay? Yo, who's worse, Bin Laden or America statistically victim-wise? Wait, what? Bin Laden or America victim-wise? What do you mean? America fucking killed 1 million Iraqis. Like, what? America sneezes and on accident fucking kills like 3,000 civilians. The fuck?
President Ford met...
America's the greatest terrorist on the planet. There's nothing that comes close to the number of civilian deaths.
With Indonesian dictator General Suharto.
Yeah. Bin Laden is the coughing baby if America is the hydrogen bomb.
And basically gave him the green light to invade. To quote Kissinger's advice to Suharto from a declassified document, "It is important that whatever you do succeeds quickly, but that it would be better if it were done after we returned to the United States." Then there's East Pakistan, now Bangladesh, which was attacked by a military-ruled West Pakistan, now just Pakistan, in 1971, a conflict that killed hundreds of thousands of Bengalis and displaced millions. And yet, as Princeton professor Gary Bass has shown, based on declassified documents and White House tapes, Kissinger stood stoutly behind Pakistan's generals, supporting the murderous regime at many of the most crucial moments. And when a U.S. diplomat on the ground in what was then East Pakistan sent a cable to Washington warning of a genocide, Kissinger called the man a maniac and had him dismissed from his post. I could go on and on and on, sadly. I didn't even get to Chile and Kissinger's support for General Pinochet's coup there, or his betrayal of Iraq's Kurds. Kissinger, of course, has for years denied any criminal culpability for any of this. But he did cancel a trip to South America in 2002 after Chile opened a probe into the Pinochet coup. As human rights lawyer Bruce Broomhall told the New York Times back then, quote, "I think it's clear that Kissinger is now one of many, many officials who have to think twice before they travel." As historian Greg Grandin of Yale has argued, a full tally hasn't been done, but a back-of-the-envelope count would attribute 3, maybe 4 million deaths to Kissinger's actions.
Easy.
So where is the accountability? The reckoning? Where is justice, dare I ask? In his 2001 book, The Trial of Henry Kissinger, the late Christopher Hitchens called for Kissinger to be prosecuted for war crimes, for crimes against humanity, and for offences against common or customary or international law, including conspiracy to commit murder, kidnap, and torture. And yet Kissinger this week celebrates his landmark 100th birthday with not an arrest warrant or war crimes tribunal in sight.
Henry Kissinger being a free man for his entire life after the many war crimes that he was the direct architect of truly shows America's hegemonic power status. Okay? Like, it goes to show you that the International Criminal Court, The Hague, international humanitarian law, all of these organs that are supposed to uphold the liberal, rule-based international order are simply there for aesthetic purposes or, in many instances, to give the go-ahead to the United States of America to go and bludgeon our foreign adversaries. Okay? Was this popular opinion to say against Kissinger years ago? Yes. 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 Henry Kissinger has been a notorious evil figure that notoriously evil figure that many people consider to be objectively evil for so long. It's not even a controversy. It's a cliche. To say rest in peace Henry Kissinger is unironically a cliche. The funny problem, the funny situation is that, like, a lot of liberals that you will be hearing from tomorrow that celebrate Henry Kissinger's death, people that adorn the aesthetics of radical politics, will be doing it without even considering the irony of their endless defense for American misconduct, American imperialism in the ongoing conflicts. We're not just talking about 4 million dead. You have to take into account how many decades worth of economic and social hardship these countries are having to endure because of him, forever stuck in the depths of poverty. Humanity is one demon. The 4 million are direct birth defects. Yeah, I mean, I showed the Anthony Bourdain quote from his book. Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. You will never again be able to open a newspaper and read about what that treacherous, prevaricating, murderous scumbag sitting down for a nice chat with Charlie Rose or attending some black tie affair for a new glossy magazine without choking. Witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you will never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic. While Henry continues to nibble nori rolls and ramaki at A-list parties, Cambodia, the neutral nation he secretly and illegally bombed, invaded, undermined, and then threw the dogs, is still trying to raise itself up on its one remaining leg.
Of New York. He later provided some assistance to the Johnson administration, but found his home ultimately as the implementer and chief advisor to Richard Nixon. And it is the Nixon-Kissinger team that would be the most consequential of any team in U.S. foreign policy until the end of the Cold War. After he left Washington, he remained significant, not only as a conduit between American foreign policy leaders and leaders that Kissinger had known, but Kissinger was the man to see if you wanted to meet the latest American president. So Kissinger is not only significant in shaping the policies of one presidency, as both a national security advisor, then a secretary of state, then both, but he would become a signal figure, an important figure for those trying to understand U.S. foreign policy for decades. Indeed, after his 100th birthday, Henry Kissinger was an honored guest in China. And for the Chinese, Kissinger was a symbol of a relationship with the United States that, frankly, doesn't really exist anymore. Kissinger was also extremely controversial because he and Nixon had undertaken extremely controversial policies. The Christmas bombing and the overturning of the Allende government in Chile.
Huh. Yeah.
And you know what I'm thinking?
Dude, if CNN is saying he's controversial, you know his ass is the worst monster. You know what I mean?
He undertook to forge a peace, you know, after the 1973 war and what that looked like. And just, can you talk about that influence that he had, particularly on this region in that moment?
Well, he had enormous influence. First of all, because the president of the United States was largely incapacitated during the Yom Kippur War. Nixon was dealing with the acceleration of the Watergate scandal and the start of the impeachment inquiry. And for all intents and purposes, Henry Kissinger was directing U.S. foreign policy during the Yom Kippur crisis. After the crisis, Kissinger, with Nixon's approval, of course, but Kissinger undertook the most complicated set of negotiations to establish a lasting ceasefire on both the northern border with Syria and the border with Egypt in the south. That took enormous effort.
Everyone
and
has
was
a New York
a
dream.
real
Come
diplomatic
find yours.
achievement on the part of Henry Kissinger. So he is remembered as a very significant figure in the history of the Middle East. And let's not also forget that he undertook very strenuous negotiations with the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese, which led to the end of the American dimension of the Vietnam Civil War. So Henry Kissinger was the most significant diplomatist of the Cold War, without exception.
Tim, I want you to stand by because I want you to continue putting this legacy in perspective, but we also have Susan Glasser, staff writer of The New Yorker. Susan, I mean, just looking at putting his legacy in perspective with how it's viewed now, I mean, this is someone who was revered and also reviled. I mean, Secretary of State, the only person to ever serve as the White House National Security Advisor and Secretary of State. I mean, how do you put his legacy in perspective to how people view it now in 2023?
Well, Caitlin, thank you so much. I mean, I would agree with you that he was a divisive figure in life, as he will now be in death, inevitably, for many liberals, really for multiple generations. Kissinger's, what they would say, the evidence of his war crimes and advising Richard Nixon and in the secret bombing of Cambodia, those things loom large, but equally so were the diplomatic achievements you were just speaking about. His enormous foreign policy vision and big brain shaped the later decades of the Cold War in a way that we are still dealing with the legacy of it. The Middle East, he basically created the notion of shuttle diplomacy and the peace process.
The Beltway butcher, war criminal Kissinger, dead at 100. I wonder if Henry Kissinger's death will cause people to just like take a cold, hard look at our policy, like our foreign affairs, everything that we've done. Especially because it's been so long. I don't know. I feel like, holy fuck, Spencer Ackerman is another one of those people that 100% friend of the show, Spencer Ackerman, definitely had an obituary. Definitely had an obituary ready to go. Henry Kissinger died on Wednesday at his home in Connecticut. His consulting firm said in a statement, the notorious war criminal was 100. Measuring purely by confirmed kills, worst mass murderer ever executed by the United States was white supremacist terrorist Timothy McVeigh. On April 19, 1995, McVeigh detonated a massive bomb at the Murrah Federal Building, killing 168 people, including 19 children. Government killed McVeigh by lethal injection on June 2001. Whatever hesitation a state execution provokes, even over a man such as McVeigh, necessary questions about the legitimacy of killing even an unrepentant soldier of white supremacy, his death provided a measure of closure to the mother of one of his victims. This appeared at the end of his sentence, Kathleen Trenner said, whose 4-year-old McVeigh killed. We'll watch the Chris Hitchens documentary on Kissinger, the trial on Henry Kissinger tomorrow. McVeigh, who in his own psychotic way thought he was saving America, never remotely killed on the scale of Kissinger, the most revered American grand strategist in the second half of the 20th century. Yale University historian Greg Grandin, author of the biography Kissinger's Shadow, estimates that Kissinger's actions from 1969 to 76, a period of 8 brief years when Kissinger made Richard Nixon's and then Gerald Ford's foreign policy as National Security Advisor and Secretary of State, meant the end of between 3 and 4 million people. That includes crimes of commission, he explained, as in Cambodia and Chile, and omission, like greenlighting Indonesia's bloodshed in East Timor, Pakistan's bloodshed in Bangladesh, and the inauguration of the American tradition of using and then abandoning the Kurds. The Cubans say there is no evil that lasts 100 years, and Kissinger is making a run to prove them wrong, Grandin told Rolling Stone. Not long before Kissinger died. There is no doubt he'll be hailed as a geopolitical grand strategist, even though he bungled most crises leading to escalation. He'll get credit for opening China, but that was de Gaulle's original idea and initiative. He'll be praised for détente, and that was a success, but he undermined his own legacy by aligning with the neocons. And of course, he'll get off scot-free from Watergate, even though his obsession with Daniel Ellsberg really drove the crime. No infamy will find Kissinger on a day like today. Instead, in a demonstration of why he was able to kill so many people and get away with it, the day of his passage will be a solemn one in Congress, and shamefully, since Kissinger had reporters like CBS's Marvin Kalb, the New York Times' Henrik Smith wiretapped newsrooms. Kissinger, a refugee from the Nazis who became a pedigreed member in the Eastern establishment of Nixon, hated, was a practitioner of American greatness, and so the press lionized him as the cold-blooded genius who restored America's prestige from the agony of Vietnam. Not once in the half century that followed Kissinger's departure from power did the millions of the United States killed matter for his reputation, except to confirm a ruthlessness that pundits occasionally find thrilling. America, like every empire, champions its state murderers. The only time I was ever in the same room as Henry Kissinger was at a 2015 National Security Conference at West Point. He was surrounded by fawning Army officers and ex-officials, basking in the presence of a statesman. Seymour Hersh, the investigative reporter who was the most prominent exception to the fawning coverage of Kissinger, watched journalistic deference take shape as soon as Kissinger entered the White House in 1969. His social comings and goings could make or break the Washington Party, Hersh wrote in his biography, The Price of Power. Reporters like the Times' James Reston were eager participants in what Hersh called an implicit shakedown scheme, that is, access journalism, in which reporters who got inside information in turn protected Kissinger. Wait, 1 second. Sorry. My mom stepped on her toe, or stepped on her foot, so I was just trying to figure out what's going on. Live Kissinger reaction. Hersh called an implicit shakedown scheme, that is access journalism, which reporters who got insider information in turn protected Kissinger by not divulging either the full consequences of his acts or his own connection to them. Kissinger's approach to the press was his approach to Nixon, sniveling obsequiousness. Although Kissinger could vent frustration on reporters that he never could on his own boss. Hersh quotes H.R. Haldeman, Nixon's chief of staff, remarking that Kissinger was the hawk of hawks inside the White House, but touching glasses at a party with his liberal friends, the belligerent Kissinger would suddenly become a dove. Reviewing one of Kissinger's litany of books, Hillary Clinton in 2014 said Kissinger, a friend whose counsel she relied upon as Secretary of State, possessed a conviction that we and President Obama share, a belief in the indispensability of continued American leadership and service of a just and liberal order. Kissinger told USA Today, within days that Clinton, presumed then to be the president in waiting, ran the State Department with the most effective way that I've ever seen. The same story noticed a photograph autographed by Obama thanking Kissinger for his continued leadership. It's always valuable to hear the reverent tones with which American elites speak of their monsters. When the Kissingers of the world pass, their humanity, their purpose, their sacrifices are foremost in the minds of the respectable. I'm probably going to have Noah on tomorrow, and I'll probably have Spencer on too. I'm going to fucking hit him up. It's always valuable to hear the reverent tones with which American elites speak of their monsters. When Kissingers of the world pass, their humanity, their purpose, their sacrifices are foremost in the minds of the respectable. American elites recoiled in disgust when Iranians in great numbers took to the streets to honor one of their monsters, Qasem Soleimani, after a U.S. drone strike executed the Iranian external security chief in January 2020. Soleimani, whom the United States declared to be a terrorist and killed as such, killed far more people than Timothy McVeigh. But even if we attribute to him all the deaths in the Syrian civil war, never in Soleimani's wildest dreams could he kill as many people as Henry Kissinger. Nor did Soleimani get to date Jill St. John, who played Bond girl Tiffany Case in Diamonds Are Forever. Kissinger's ascent occurred through an obscenity that time cannot diminish. In 1968, Lyndon Johnson agreed to peace negotiations with the North Vietnamese in tacit recognition of the nightmare he, building on the works of his two immediate predecessors, brought to life in Vietnam. Kissinger, an influential Cold War defense intellectual at Harvard, had access to members of the diplomatic delegation to the Paris talks. He used it to feed information from the negotiations to Richard Nixon's presidential campaign, a campaign whose defeated GOP rival, David Rockefeller, Kissinger advised, and despite Kissinger's closer political ties to the coterie around Hubert Humphrey, Nixon's Democratic rival. Nixon ran for president claiming to have a secret plan to end the war. His advisors told Hersh they were deeply afraid that Johnson and Hanoi would reach an accord before the election. It would save lives in Vietnam, American and Vietnamese, but it would undermine Nixon's hopes of exploiting the explosion of domestic anti-war sentiment. Nixon gratefully took what Kissinger gave him to make the U.S.'s proxy regime in Saigon, whose regime peace would destabilize, more intransigent. No agreement was reached until 1973, and the war ended American humiliation with Hanoi's 1975 victory. I love that thing. Ne yapıyorsunuz? You closed the lights behind me. I don't know what's going on. It took some balls to give us those tips. Richard Allen, a foreign policy researcher on the Nixon campaign, later reflected to the Hirsch. After all, it was a pretty dangerous thing for Kissinger to be screwing around with national security. Every single person who died in Vietnam between autumn 1968 and the fall of Saigon, and all who died in Laos and Cambodia, where Nixon and Kissinger secretly expanded the war within months of taking office, as well as all who died in the aftermath, like the Cambodian genocide, their destabilization set into motion, died because of Henry Kissinger. We will never know what might have been. The question Kissinger's apologists and those in the U.S. foreign policy elite, which are, that's reductive. Those are the Kissinger apologists who continued on his legacy for the most part. Insist upon when explaining away, elite who have stood in or who imagine themselves standing in Kissinger's shoes, insist upon when explaining away his crimes. Kissinger materially sabotaged the only chance for an end to the war in 1968 as a hedged bet to ensure he would achieve power in Nixon's administration or Humphrey's. A true tally will probably never be known of everyone who died, so Kissinger could be national security advisor. Yeah, Noam Chomsky has officially outlived Henry Kissinger, which is good.
A lot of history doing so. Your reaction to his death?
It's a sad day for us because he was a leader that led through challenging times. And I hope that everyone's reaction to his passing is to go learn a little bit more about him that you did.
I agree. I 100% agree. As a matter of fact, I do. Yes, everyone will forcibly learn about Henry Kissinger in the upcoming week. And that will not be a good thing because Henry Kissinger and his policies were so monstrous and so far in our rear view mirror that we can actually make honest assessments about them. Because as you know, liberals love the current war, even though they hate all the previous wars, and say the previous wars were bad. They talk about all the civil rights movements of the past as a good thing that they would certainly support, just not the one that's currently happening now, right? But Henry Kissinger's actions are very much in the rear view mirror. So a lot of liberals who will lap up the rest of the State Department propaganda for the ongoing wars will, at the very least, come to the recognition. That's Madeleine Albright on the left. Chatter who asked, who's that on the left? Another demon.
Didn't know before. Around your dinner table or when you're driving in the car with your kids, tell them a few Kissinger quotes that were used at strategic times. Give them a little bit of history, because if we forget what happened in the past, we're doomed to repeat it. And many times throughout history, the United States...
Wait, is she being woke? Like, what's happening? I'm confused. She's like...
States of America went through dark times, and leaders like Kissinger stood up and they took action and they provided leadership when we needed it the most.
Yeah, making a lot of history.
Anyway, before we get back to the article, here is Mao being surprised at the height of Henry Kissinger's wife. Like, look at the size of your wife, man. Dear God. Anyway. Once in the White House, Nixon and Kissinger found themselves without leverage to produce a peace accord with Hanoi. In the hopes of manufacturing one, they came up with the madman theory. This is... Oh, everything is so bad. This is... just another sequence of demonstrable L after L after L, just demonstrable failures over and over again as we just fucking pursued the might is right politics in American foreign policy over and over and over and over again. Oh yeah, he got a Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, of course. So did Obama. Fuck you mean? Look, you can often tell within that neutral tone that people adorn in American media and Western media in general, when someone is truly a unique monster, right? Look at the words of the New York Times. Look at the way that David Sanger, White House and national security correspondent for the New York Times, wrote about Henry Kissinger, who engineered the U.S. opening to China, negotiated its exit from Vietnam, and used cunning ambition and intellect to remake power relationships at the height of the Cold War, sometimes trampling on democratic values, dies at 100. The fact that this is the most you're going to get, okay? Like, the Adolf Hitler would be written about like this if he was an American, okay? Straight up. Would Obama be considered a war criminal as well? Fuck yes. What do you mean? Every American president? Well, yes, every single one. Tweeting you're delighted an old man's death won't win you converts or repulse potential allies, at least not on a large enough scale to matter. It will, however, make you a worse person, which is why you shouldn't do it. Yeah, reporter for Free Beacon. Shut the fuck up. Suck my dick. If you like him so much, why don't you go visit him? You know what I mean? Like, he's fucking, you can follow him, you know? Into the deepest, darkest pits of hell. Fuck, get the fuck out of here, bitch ass. I don't remember where I was on 9/11, but I'll never... What? We took an L? Yeah, dude, this is a classic. Come on. This is a classic. I'm hearing that on his deathbed, Henry Kissinger received the light of Islam and unhesitatingly recited the Shahada. Even now, he looks down on the Ummah from the gardens of Jannah. Truly, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. Establishment media talks about Kissinger war crimes like he has autism. He was just a little quirked up white boy. Yeah, he was too smart. That's why he just kept doing. That's why he just kept doing insane war crimes. Which, by the way, so let's get to it. Madman theory. The idea that North Vietnam would negotiate peace after they came to believe Nixon was adventurous and bloodthirsty enough to risk anything. Just a fucking gigantic failure. In February 1969, Madman theory is awesome. Because it's just America being like, we're belligerent. We'll nuke you. We got nukes. We'll fucking do anything. Don't even stop. You can't stop me. I'll do it. What a strat. What a strategy. Incredible. In February 1969, weeks after taking office and lasting through April 1970, U.S. warplanes secretly dropped 110,000 tons of bombs on Cambodia. You did not mishear what I said. 110,000 tons of bombs on Cambodia. Okay? By the summer of 1969, according to a colonel in the Joint Staff, Kissinger, who had no constitutional role in the military chain of command, was personally selecting bombing targets. Not only was Henry carefully screening the raids, he was reading the raw intelligence, Colonel Ray B. Sitton told Hirsch for The Price of Power. A second phase of bombing continued until August 1973. Now, some of you may know Seymour Hersh, old Cy Hersh, as the legend who uncovered the My Lai massacre, or maybe you know about him because your favorite NATO-loving radical liberal YouTube Andy told you that he's actually a loser and you shouldn't trust his word at all. Who's to say? Who's to say who has more influence in this circumstance? A man dedicated his entire life to uncovering the truth about American war crimes and doing so diligently, or a guy sitting in his fucking living room shitting at him. Okay. But I have the power of Wikipedia backing me. So anyway, let's continue. I don't know. Who's to say? Oh, Spencer's down. Here's
I wanted to ask you, in your memoir, you have several chapters devoted to your period at the New York Times. And one of the most interesting to me was your account of the relationship of Henry Kissinger to key people at the Times, like Abe Rosenthal, and how he fed stories to the
Everyone's celebrating the piece of shit death is funny. I haven't seen a single person defending. There's some guy at the fucking Washington Beacon did
Times. And to talk about that.
Well, I'm hired in '72 by Rosenthal and at the August, and I always wanted to work. The Times then was, if you were a journalist, it's the place to work. It still is. It's still a great newspaper. I hate the coverage of Trump. I wish they'd get off the tweets and do the kind of stuff that they're doing now. That story was there 2 months ago. Come on. You missed it.
Migrants on the border.
No, and Yemen, they're missing it. I mean, they're doing some stuff on it, but it's really, the American role is so much deeper than they know. Anyway, I keep on coming back to it.
Tune into democracy.
I joined
now.
the Times, and I'm just minding my business. I get a place. I was sort of the commie reporter. I hired May 1st. I was sent to see late October. I went to the North Vietnamese delegation in Paris and wrote stories. Within a week or 10 days of being in the New York Times, I'm interviewing Madame Binh, this marvelous woman that headed the National Liberation Front. I went back to Vietnam a few years ago and had a long coffee with her at 89, as sharp as ever. I mean, it's amazing, beautiful, dark-haired. Everywhere she went in Paris, women applauded her. A leading, just amazing woman. Anyway, so I get back to the Washington Bureau, and I'm just randomly giving a seat next to a guy who did foreign policy, and I'm minding my business, and every day at 5 o'clock, the secretary to the bureau chief would walk out, and the reporter was Bernie Gertzman, who was a very competent professional journalist. And she would say, Max Frankel was the bureau chief. She would say, Max is done. Henry's called, and we're coming to you now. And then the next thing you know, Bernie would take notes. He would laugh and talk to Kissinger, and then he would write a story. And I'm watching it. Then story the next day would lead the paper and say, government sources said so-and-so. About the third or fourth day, I said, this is a pattern. There was a moment when something going diplomatic, but every day Kissinger's would come from Kissinger to the bureau chief to Bernie, who was the chief foreign correspondent, into the front page of the New York Times without a hint of who. I mean, everybody sort of knew it was Kissinger. And so I asked him about the third or fourth day, and he's a very straightforward guy. I said, Bernie, do you ever talk to Mel Laird? If you remember, I had a relationship, and I knew Mel was against some of the policies. You ever talk to Secretary of State Bill Rogers?
Fuck?
Well, I didn't know the Secretary. But Rogers was State, and Laird was Secretary of Defense.
What the
And
fuck?
he said, oh, no, he said.
What does she know? I have a feeling Henry Kissinger is about to die 10:29 a.m. this morning. The fact that y'all have no idea what's about to happen, respect. We are engaging in a detente. Ladies and gentlemen, the war with the barbs is over. The war with the barbs is over. Nicki Minaj back on top. We are doing, in the honor of the late, great Henry Kissinger, she rode him to death. Fuck. In honor of the late, great Dr. Henry Kissinger. We got Henry Kissinger dying before GTA 6. Oh, I thought you were going to send me the other Zach Fox tweet. We said, I lost No Nut November. Barb's diplomacy time.
If we did that, Henry wouldn't talk to us. This is
all about him talking about basically what the Rolling Stones article from Spencer, who's going to be on the show tomorrow at 1 p.m., is talking about how, like, all of the pieces of shit in D.C., all the journalists were engaging in access journalism with Henry Kissinger. So they would just, like, they wouldn't cover his crimes adequately.
You know, out of the old verbatim dialogue that used to be in the Village Voice, remember?
So Gorsuch's getting a daily call from Henry Kissinger.
It was that week.
A
was
regular
daily.
call.
A call when there was a crisis that involved that stuff. I mean, it was like, what?
I wanted to read you a quote from the late chef and TV broadcaster Anthony Bourdain, who just took his own life. He was talking about Henry Kissinger. He wrote in his 2001 book, A Cook's Tour, quote, "Once you've been to Cambodia, you'll never stop wanting to beat Henry Kissinger to death with your bare hands. You'll never again be able to open a newspaper and read about that treacherous, prevaricating, murderous scumbag sitting down for a nice chat with Charlie Rose or attending some black tie affair with a new glossy magazine without choking. Witness what Henry did in Cambodia, the fruits of his genius for statesmanship, and you'll never understand why he's not sitting in the dock at The Hague next to Milosevic."
Wow.
That was Anthony Bourdain, who just killed himself last week.
I did not know that quote. The only thing I remember is I wrote this long book about Kissinger, which we talked about at length on this show, and somebody called it an indictment or a bill of attainder. And I remember the next year at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, to which no rational journalist should go to, celebrating the president. It's not our job. It's not our job. And by the way, my complaint with the New York Times was we shouldn't recognize America. We're not America First. We're an international newspaper. Why the America First focus? But that's a more subtle issue. And everybody would want Kissinger even the next year at their table. What I always said about Kissinger publicly and again is that when people have to count, they can't sleep and they count sheep, I think Kissinger has to count burned and maimed Cambodian and Vietnamese babies the rest of his life. But of course he doesn't.
Because of what he was in charge of.
Oh my God, not just Cambodia, in Vietnam. You tell me where it is. I mean, come on. I mean, we're talking about this is in any other society, he would be in the dock. He'd be right there. He's absolutely right, in The Hague with Milosevic. War crimes. These were war crimes that were going on. And the Christmas bombing, when there was a peace settlement and Nixon wanted more, he was afraid Nixon's just afraid, he wanted to shore up his support, and Middle America, I guess they called it. So they do a Christmas bombing that has nothing to do with the peace process. Come on, what is that? That's just murder.
Back when Salam would host Benjamin Norton in a debate, Hillary Clinton boasted that she's supported by Henry Kissinger, accused the war criminal who oversaw policy that led to millions of deaths. Oh. Hillary is an equal demon, just never had the same type of power as Kissinger. She would have done the same and more. I mean, she did have the same type of power as under Kissinger, just not the same level of control over operations. She did. And look what she did with all that power. She just didn't have... I mean, look at Libya. God, I hate America so much. It's just like... It's nutty. I'm tweeting this. Blacksmith thing is not tomorrow. It's next week.